Faye Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm honoured to have the chance to speak in this debate this afternoon. Having listened all afternoon, I'm proud of so many colleagues for their brave testimony, but I particularly applaud my honourable friend, the member for Hyndburn, who made an historic maiden speech. I want to congratulate both front benches for the dedication they have shown to this issue. On both sides this afternoon, we've heard from some strong Welsh voices on the front bench, but I'm proud to be the first female Welsh speaker in this debate. This bill could not be more timely. While most of us take refuge in our homes from COVID-19, it's important to recognise that the virus is not the biggest threat to those who are enduring the lockdown with an abuser. At the heart of this bill is a new definition of domestic abuse. This will ensure that all domestic abuse is properly understood, as it is evident that abuse can be perpetrated in many forms and knows no bounds. As I'm sure is the case for many colleagues, I've been contacted by several different organisations with views on the proposed definition. One which was particularly compelling to me was the call to include so-called honour-based violence. While it's important not to limit the understanding of domestic abuse to specific acts, I do hope to see recognition of abuse experienced by specific groups and communities included in the government's guidance to this bill. I'm also pleased to hear that the government has begun a review into what support can be provided to migrant victims of domestic abuse. But I would ask that the government revisits the issue of no recourse to public funds for victims with certain immigration status. I want to congratulate the government that this bill has a gender-neutral status. Doing so will include the 2.9 million men who have experienced domestic abuse in their lifetime, a figure which is thought to be considerably underreported, and it will reiterate the commitment that this government seeks to protect everyone from abuse. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm particularly pleased to see that the new definition will include economic abuse. An incredibly brave constituent recently contacted me, having moved to my constituency to start a new life after leaving an abusive marriage. She was subject to physical and mental abuse from her ex-husband and left with nothing but the clothes on her back when she fled. It took her 3 years to obtain a divorce, but a divorce in and of itself will not address the financial relationship which arises in a marriage and can often continue on separation. For this lady, her ex-husband would not agree to a fixed period to address their joint mortgage. And in her words, "It has been over 7 years since we parted and I'm still tied to the person who emotionally broke me. It is like a hold still over me, something he always wanted." Her story convinces me that we must review the financial ties that can exist within abusive relationships and to find ways to help victims completely free themselves. This bill must ensure that it helps those in situations like my constituent. Our courts cannot simply allow financial ties to facilitate coercive control over victims long after relationships end. I've spoken to the Minister about this privately and I look forward to working with her on this point. Now, my constituent had the courage not only to leave her abusive relationship, but to find herself a new career in Dyfed-Powys Police Force, where she deals with domestic abuse reports almost every day. I know my constituent is watching this debate, and I want to take the opportunity to repeat that I find her courage and her service a genuine inspiration, and I know others do as well. I also want to applaud the work of Welsh Women's Aid, who've been supporting women and campaigning for change in Wales for over 40 years. One area where I agree with them is around reforms to the family justice system. This bill contains a ban on perpetrators being able to cross-examine their victims in the family courts, and also provides domestic abuse victims with automatic eligibility for special measures in criminal cases. But I do believe we could go further. I would urge the government to look at extending this ban to any family, criminal or civil proceedings in domestic abuse, sexual abuse, stalking or harassment cases. Madam Deputy Speaker, one final point. The beauty of areas like Brecon and Radnorshire can often mask issues like domestic violence. I know the Safeguarding Minister also represents a heavily rural constituency, as I do, but I urge the Minister to give careful consideration to the challenge of policing and safeguarding in rural areas as the bill goes through its later stages. Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I give this bill my firm support, and it gives me huge pride to be part of a government which, at this time of national crisis, prioritises legislation which protects vulnerable people from harm.